First off, I need to calm down or let it out somehow.
Are you willing to talk about that stuff and how that's factored into, you improving your own life?
Absolutely not.
Our world is constantly trying to tear our attention.
Anger is just simply another emotion, and it can be used in a healthy way.
And that piled on top of rejection and on top of rejection really turns into a syndrome of rage.
You're like, well, where did that come from? It wasn't just that.
Hey, Ron, one of the things that you talk about is how the world right now needs more neurodivergent thinking. And this is, I think, something that a lot of people would go like, what is it that you mean by that? And I think that I'm kind of doing that too. So can you explain a little bit about why you feel neurodivergent thinking is so important?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. And I'm still understanding that myself. But from my perspective and what I've been learning is like there's so much creativity and thinking outside the box, the ability to do that, especially when it comes to growing a business. Like you look at some of the most innovative companies, such as like Tesla, they give their leaders like an autonomy. And when you have somebody with ADHD, especially when you come in and you give them that space to be who they are and like accepting them as they are and not necessarily being like it's okay to do whatever, but like if I'm getting distracted in a meeting, maybe we need to change the meeting format, to make it more of like a walking meeting. So we're outside. So like it doesn't feel as like I'm in here and I need to focus in this certain type of way and I'm boxed in, you know, stuff like that.
I think that it's really difficult because both you and I have ADHD, and it's really difficult to live in like a neurotypical world with ADHD. And this is how we're educated. This is how we are kind of expected to be in the workplace. And I really encourage my clients to get uh, jobs and careers that allow for them to be flexible, to have a flexible schedule, to be able to move around. And the people who do driving jobs, the people who do a lot of moving around jobs are ones that I see do really, really well. I also see people, because there's this contingent of ADHD where you have this lightning high IQ, where you're able to really blend in pretty well. You're able to mask pretty darn well, and then you end up getting into a situation where maybe I have clients who are attorneys, and they really struggle with the workload because you have to focus really long hours and you have to stay put, and it's really, really tough for them. And so, when you're talking about people who are in these really high pressure positions to perform in a certain way, how do you work with them, and what is it that you recommend for them?
So yeah, the high pressure, and it all goes back to the same thing. Like, and that's why I feel like neurodivergent leaders especially are so is exactly what the world needs because we're highly sensitive people, but we're taught to like, we need to suppress that. Emotions have no place in the workplace. Honestly, they are there and they show up. You see, even on that Kansas City Chiefs game, like if you watched the Lion, it was like the way the reporter was like, oh, yeah, there was a lot of emotions flying high. Like, of course there were what really was going on and kind of looking at emotions like this is bad, this needs to be contained, like something happened there, that wasn't explored. And these men, who aren't taught how to like express their emotions, especially in a leadership level, like that situation becomes so much bigger than it really needs to be. You understand what I'm saying?
For sure, for sure. And I guess we can go into the sensitivity and the rejection sensitivity and the emotional sensitivity. And it's oftentimes what people deal with who have ADHD is a lot of rage and a lot of anger. Not that it necessarily comes out in any sort of physical way all the time, but a lot of internalized feelings of being really hurt. And this, in my opinion, comes from really a lifetime of a lot of letdowns, a lot of rejection. And that piled on top of rejection, on top of rejection, really turns into a syndrome of rage that is often quite difficult for the person with ADHD to deal with, and difficult for the people who are around them, who don't know when the ADHDer is going to not be angry about something anymore, because tend to carry it for a really long time. When you're working with people, what have you seen in terms of anger that people carry, and what do you recommend them do to deal with it?
Yeah, yeah, and that's a huge thing. That was, and I always go back to myself. Like, I've carried a lot of anger and I guess, like you'd say, rage. Deep seated anger about the world. Like I felt like the core of who I was like this fiery pulsy anger. That I always tried to suppress because it was like it wasn't. I was taught that this wasn't good anytime that I reacted. But the thing is, like, what I've learned is that anger is just simply another emotion, and it can be used in a healthy way. Like, you imagine, like, Martin Luther King, if he wasn't angry about the situation that was happening, and that frankly is continuing to happen in the world, like, he wouldn't have stood up, but he stood up in a healthy way. He redirected that anger into a healthy, productive thing. So it's like it's and a lot of times I teach my clients is to look at that anger and explore it, and really be curious about it. Ask the question: Is this something that I should die? Is this a hill that I want to die on today? Like, and maybe it is crossing a line. A lot of times with my anger, I look at it like, am I going to be able to continue to put up with this thing that caused me to be angry? Or do I need to talk about it? Do I need to calm? First off, I need to calm down or let it out somehow. And sometimes it's like it shows up as me screaming in my car and saying what I need to say without having to say it to that person that probably is going through whatever they're going through. To say it, to react the way they reacted to me. So, and then if I can't get there that way, I have other people that I can talk to and run that by and say, and usually when that happens, it's either they say something to me or actually hear me saying it. And then I see like either how strong it is or like how ridiculous it seems. So
Yeah.
it's like understanding your anger on a deep, and usually anger is covering up other emotions. I look at it like it's a fire, like with energy or electricity or whatever. Like every time you suppress that, it gets stronger, and then it ends up exploding. That's what you see often, like with people that have repressed anger, is they explode after nothing. Like it's usually the straw that broke the camel's back. You're like, well, where did that come from? It wasn't just that, it was built up over time with a lot of other issues that weren't like you didn't advocate for yourself. You didn't stand up and say, "Look, I don't like the way, that I felt when you talked to me this way. I know you probably didn't mean to say it that way, but, like, for us to work together, I'm gonna have to ask you to get better with that, because I really
Well,
want us to
I'd
work
like to.
together. Or what did I do to like make to like, did I do something that we need to talk about? Stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, and with anger and rage, there's often some underlying frequencies of depression. And you, can I ask you a couple of personal questions here?
Of course.
Seems, uh, I know that you've dealt with some depression and some addiction. And are you willing to talk about that stuff and how that's factored into, you improving your own life?
Absolutely not. Just kidding. No, I'm an addict. Like, I don't there used to be, like, this reservation of, like, because I go to the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous, and, um, I'm not a representative of them in any way, shape, or form, to get that absolutely clear. I just say that because, like, some of the stuff that they teach in there is about autonomy, and it's that means it's up to you to talk about whether you're an addict or not. Basically, it means a lot more than that, but in this context, so, I grapple with that for a long time because it's like there is a stigma against, saying you're an addict. And what if, like, I'm coaching somebody and they find out I'm an addict? Will they really take me as seriously, or will I be able to help as many people? I feel like it doesn't matter. Like, there are so many people that are addicts out there that don't have a voice, that don't like, people in general just don't understand that every addict out there is somebody's child that went through, like, some type of, like, life trauma, like extreme, like it's usually like sexual or physical or abandonment issues. Like, it's some level of trauma to them that they felt they don't deserve love. And all of us suffer from that to a degree, but it's like I'm willing to blow up my life to get what I need to feel loved in a way, which is usually in the form of drugs, so that, like, I can function in life, that so I can show up and I can feel like at least enough to do what I'm doing. And you have so many people that are caught in this system that are, like, either homeless or just can't, that they just don't know what's going on with them, that we need to start talking about it, so that, it gets to a level where we're talking about in politics and family and school, so that we can warn people of, like, hey, look, if you don't do this, and it starts early on. It starts with the brain development, like the way that a child is cared for when they're young is completely related to whether they become an addict or not. So there's research from that, from Dr. Gabor Mate, and, like, it is incredible. And some of the stuff, the reason why most people don't hear about that, or the scientific community doesn't really accept it, because he goes into the emotional and the spiritual realms to add that to, like, the research, and most science doesn't do that.
Yeah, what for you is the spiritual practice that helps you remain focused on your life and your healing?
Yeah, that's been, complete continuing to evolve. I believe in God. I truly, like, a lot of the stuff that's written in scripture is, it talks about how God doesn't make mistakes, how God doesn't lie. So if he created each and every one of us and doesn't make a mistake, that means that I'm not broken, and that I have the strength to be, like, I have a gift that was given to me by God and a purpose on this life to fulfill. And I believe that I found that purpose in what I'm doing, because everything else that I've tried did not work. It did not fulfill that, like most of us have this emptiness in our heart. And I feel like when when I'm on fire for God, like that, like there's a, like my heart is full, like it's overflowing. Like you hear them talk about it, but and I've heard them too, and I've been on the fence about it for a lot of my life. It's about using the scripture and your belief to help with your current problems, like whether that's focus or strength or doubt, fear, anxiety, all these things. When you know, like when you have a positive like affirmation, or like you understand what you're doing is going to have good results, and you have these joyful anticipation of positive results, then that anxiety disappears. The only reason why you have anxiety and depression is because you feel like what you're doing isn't going to work.
Yeah, this is something that's really difficult for a lot of ADHDers. And it is the concept of spirituality in any way being relevant to the path with ADHD. I think that it actually really is. And regardless of the means by which one becomes fulfilled, ADHDers struggle in a couple of areas. And that is in low self image, the way that we talk to ourselves, concepts of what our actual value is. And when we're in that space, we tend to loop over and over and we tend to perseverate on negativity. And one of the things that I work on with my clients is number one, let's define a spiritual practice for you, whether or not you have a defined faith, because the faith of whatever style or spiritual practice is what creates a discipline that is outside of the grave distractions in our world. And so when you're talking about a Christian practice, you're talking about prayer. Often there's things like a like rosary or various like Christian ritual or songs, praise, worship, and these things very fulfilling to the soul, very relaxing, very empowering. And it's wonderful. There's other practices too, like I recommend mindfulness or meditation. It's difficult for ADHD people, and so I just say, hey, start with 3 minutes, bro.
Yeah.
Start with 3 minutes, and start getting into it. Maybe 3 times a day for 3 minutes. Y'all can do that, okay? But really actually connecting with something, some kind of spiritual practice, even if you are simply working on meditating, balancing your chakras, because it gives you something really tangible to focus on and a path to develop. I think it's absolutely critical for the ADHD person, as well as really good nutrition, good daily strenuous exercise, and a paying attention to your spirit, because our world is constantly trying to tear our attention apart, this way, that way, make us feel emotions, make us angry. By the end of the day, we're really quite emotionally exhausted, and we we have to fill ourselves with something that is positive and filled with light. So I love that for you, spirit is a regular part of your own path. And do you do that kind of work with your clients?
Yeah, I mean, like it's I would love for them to find what I found, to a degree, but like at the same time I understand how long it took for me to get to where I'm at, and that I had to go through a series of, transformations. So I give them like basic stuff in the beginning. It's more of like a why. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? Like, that is so important to understand, like on a deep level, like why you want to do this work. Because if it's not that, if it's not there, there's nothing you can that anchors you to the work that you're about to do, because it's not going to be easy. But at the same time, life isn't going to be easy, period. So you might as well as make it work for you in a way. And like you said, mindfulness is huge. Like, it's not like, oh, well, I just believe in God and all these other things go to the side. Like, there's a lot of mindfulness in like meditation. Like, when I meditate on scriptures, or I go out for a walk around a lake, and it's so beautiful and I see the nature and the beauty and I connect with that. Like, I literally go around in the morning, and like I'll touch the trees, I go listen to the birds, and like for me, it's like the birds are praising God, and it's like, wow, they're really praising Him today. Like, that's amazing, and being thankful and grateful for the things that you do have, while focusing on strengths as well. So, like, one of the practices that I've learned, um, is MBSP. So that's mindfulness based strengths practice. And that's combining mindfulness with character strengths. So we all have these 20 in that practice, there's 24 character strengths, which are like anywhere from forgiveness to creativity to honesty, kindness, even humor. Like, and we all have like a top five or signature strengths that define who we are. But most of us don't know what those strengths are, because, to be honest, it goes back to how society is. Like, we're taught like we need to focus on what we're bad at and get better with it. And like, where we're always competing with one another and seeing where we're falling short, instead of look. And when you do look at it, it's looked at as egotistical. Like, oh, he's saying he's honest, or he's saying he has humility, you know? And you can never have enough of those things. No one's completely honest, but like, there are some people that are more honest in certain that's their strength. And like, when you can lean on that, especially like, there was a lot of my life where I was completely dishonest, especially with my drug addiction. And when people, I would never admit that to anybody. There was very few people. I was lying in my life, and one of the my signature strengths is honesty. So like, that literally was hurting me and my self-esteem, because like, that was a strength that was mine. And it, every time that I was dishonest, it hurt the core of who I was. So it was only damaging me. And other people, it's like, once I've been able to see the strengths in myself, I can see them, start to see them in other people. And then the best thing about it is like, being able to spot those strengths, like your open mindedness, your curiosity is like so amazing, because like, honestly, curiosity is something that is one of those things that helps, is like a super strength to me, because it's like, when you can have that childlike curiosity and like, what can I learn from this guy? Or what can I learn from this situation? Or what can I pick up from that? Like, you're so much more like willing to that activate that love of learning, which can open up so many doors.
Yeah, it can. And with regard to that, like, learning that you're doing yourself, can you talk about the self-discovery journal for adults with ADHD?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, it was a book that a journal that I, it was part of my process of, discovering these emotions, and I went into a deeper process. And, I definitely go into a deeper process with my clients. But, it's for everybody to just be able to pick up, because the power of journaling is like, it's a process of discovery. But like, a lot of journaling doesn't give you those prompts to like, or questions to ponder when you journal. And it's okay to have as many journals as you need to, like, I definitely advocate, like, if you feel a certain emotion in a situation, write it down. Like, write down the whole situation, how you felt, what happened, every little detail that you can, so that you can like process it outside of your brain, because your brain's going to interpret it in a different way. So with that journal, it gives you like prompts on like, why does certain criticism affect me more when others say it? And exploring that, like, why does that affecting me on that level? Why am I allowing that to affect me? And where is that coming from? So it's like at times we're just running through life and getting triggered and blowing up on people for no reason. And we really can just kind of look at those situations, I know in my life, and just like, say, hey, this has been a pattern. Like, where is this coming from? And is it them or is it me? You know?
Right. And sometimes we don't really have like the best insight into that. And sometimes we know we're right. And that's what makes it so infuriating, is that we know that we can see the situation incredibly clearly, and we react to that. I think one of the most difficult things to help people with is procrastination, and the path to procrastination, the emotions around it, and what happens. And for someone who struggles with task initiation, what's one simple high impact strategy that can break that cycle?
Yeah. And before I get into that, I just really want to like break down what procrastination really is. It's not laziness. It's more of I feel like it comes more from that perfectionist mindset of like, well, I need to get this perfect and it needs to be done right. And if like those things don't align, then you can't start, or you don't know where to begin. And a lot of times it's like, just start. Like, just give yourself 2 minutes, one task. That's it.
Hmm.
Whether that's an outline, or you're trying to write a thesis, or a book, or whatever that may look like. Um, just come up with the outline. Come up with the title of the book, come up with like the purpose of the book, and just like start there. And if you keep going, great. But just give yourself 2 minutes and just write whatever comes out. Like, it's it's not about using everything that you write. A lot of writers, I'm a writer, and like I'll just some of the best writing techniques that I've learned was like from this book called it's like this free writing technique, and you literally just go in. It's recommended you do it on a daily basis, but like you go in, you give yourself 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and you just write whatever thoughts are coming through your head, and you just brain dump. Like, it doesn't have to make any sense. And it does, you kind of want to follow like a basic, like, keep along that thought pattern, but see where it goes and see where it takes you, and just keep writing. It's about the process of writing, and sometimes you can use what you wrote in those free writing sessions as like, it's a powerful experience. I would definitely recommend trying that, especially if you're dealing with procrastination.
Yeah, it that calls upon just the innate sense of creativity that
Yeah.
there is with people with ADHD. I was diagnosed with ADHD really young in my life, in the first grade. I had at the time, there was this idea that, well, the boy will grow out of it. At a certain point, he won't have this anymore. That was the idea back in the 1980s. That's what my parents were told. And so I believed that to a certain extent. And I got into my 20s and I entered the workforce in a particularly boring job. And so what we do is we tend to master the job extremely quickly. And then we got a bunch of time to screw around. And so I was working for a federal agency, really the worst rated agency of all of the agencies in the federal government, which is the Social Security Administration, tied at the bottom for the Bureau with the Bureau of Prisons. And it was this extremely boring workplace that was incredibly rules based, and I never should have worked there. But you end up learning how to, like, I worked the front windows. I was able to get people through really quick, so I would clear out those lobbies, and the people in the lobbies loved it because they wouldn't have to wait so long. But then I'd have all sorts of time to play jokes on the guard and hijinks in the office, and always on the verge of maybe getting in trouble, but kind of talking my way out of it.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the hidden cost of ignoring neurodivergence in the workplace, and what it tends to happen a lot to people who are in a workplace that's not well suited to them, and the kinds of things that you've seen happen with people?
Yeah, and there is a hidden cost because it's like, a lot of people and companies, like they want to have this hierarchy of, like, everyone's conforming to whatever the boss says. Like, they most bosses usually want to be the smartest person in the room, and that's the biggest mistake, because there's just no way that you're the smartest person in the room. The smartest person in the room knows they're not, and they surround themselves with other people that have diverse thinking. And a lot of diverse thinking comes from neurodivergence. So it's like, but, trying to change those systems is incredibly difficult because there's so much, like, interference between you and the people that can actually make that change, because they've made it that way. It's human nature to follow the easiest path up, the path of least resistance. But that doesn't mean that it's good and that it works. Those systems that conform are very, like, very easily destroyed. Like, they're very weak, and like I said, Tesla, is a great example of innovation, because they put people in the places that they need to be, and they encourage innovation among those. So there's no one person to, like say, well, you have to run this idea by this person before you even start making it. Like, they make it and then they bring it, and but with these other systems, like, I've tried in this place that I work, to talk about mental health and just to get that, ball rolling, to let, because I truly believe that if supervisors learned about mental health and how to have those conversations, especially with neurodivergent thinkers, like, they will have so much more job satisfaction, less turnover. They'll be able to understand what's going on. In order to know what's going on, you have to talk to the people that are on the front lines and understand and get them whatever they need within reason to do their job better. Like, your company's going to run better. It's going to be easier for you. You're not going to have to avoid those uncomfortable conversations, because they're really not that uncomfortable if you know how to have them. If you're coming in there with that curiosity mindset, like, or if you're just going out there on a day-to-day basis and being like, your employee's name, like every single one of them, and like, or at least most of them, and the ones that you don't, you figure it out and you figure out what their interests are. Then you understand how they're doing on a day-to-day basis, and you can tell when they're off, and you can ask them questions. That's really all that it takes. And most management systems are so, like, think that is such a leap that they'd rather lose millions of dollars on turnover, just turnover, just so they don't have to talk to their so they don't have to go outside their bubble.
Yeah. And I guess what would be your best piece of advice for a supervisor who has a subordinate that is neurodivergent? And rather because oftentimes they know this through HR. You have somebody who is different than the others, and they feel maybe at times like they don't know what to do, how to talk to them, how to provide the kind of feedback that sometimes the neurodivergent really needs. You don't know what you're doing wrong unless somebody tells you sometimes. And so, how would you instruct or direct a supervisor to talk to their subordinate?
Well, I'd like coach them in the way that they're like comfortable with doing that, and everybody's different, So it's more about but the overall like piece of advice that I would give is just treat them like the boss that you wish you had. Just coming from that mindset of like asking them what's going on. Pulling them aside and being like, "Look, I'm not your boss right now. I'm trying to come at you, as your friend, because like I'm concerned with what's going on, and it doesn't seem like things are working out. What can I do to help with that, or is there something that you need to talk about? Is there any other resources that you may need? Because I want this to work out." Like I see you're good. Like notice they're good, what they do good, and know that they want to do that. And when they do show up, like most people, they want to show up and they want to provide and they want to do things, but there's a disconnect somewhere. Your goal is to be curious enough, and it may not happen in that first session, and don't get discouraged, but like continue to have that conversation. And then once you lay out like that game plan, it's on them to follow it, but follow up with them. But if they continue to stop doing, I'm not saying like give them a free pass for whatever, but like give them some rope to work with and see what they do with that, and then give them some more. And like, cuz it's like if you're trying to control everything as a boss, like that is a stressful, so you're never going to be able to do that. Like you've got to be able to trust the people that you put in those positions, even if they don't seem like they're going to do it your way, but like understand that they're doing their best. Maybe they don't know how to do it their way. Maybe you've got to communicate that, like being absolutely transparent. And maybe you got to like start out with like how you feel. Look, I've struggled with this, be vulnerable. Like that's going to go so far.
Right. Right. Well, it will. And we've reached the point in the interview where I tell you what I love about you.
Great.
And what I love about you is your openness. And it's one of the primary characteristics of somebody who has ADHD is the ability to very openly and freely and without guard talk about themselves. And it's not easy to do sometimes because sometimes you talk about things that maybe you're not particularly proud of. I love your openness. I love that you have taken your own personal struggle and you've turned it around and you're helping others. I love that you have become such an expert in this field that is growing so much because so many people are getting diagnosed in midlife and waking up and saying, "My God, this is why I am the way that I am." And there are people like you out there to help them with that. So thank you for the work that you do.
I really am, I appreciate your words of kindness, and thank you. I take that gift into my heart.
Well, tell people where they can get in touch with you.
So yeah, if you want to step into my world, you can always find me on my podcast. It's Don't Mind Me. I Just Have ADHD. It's on every Thursday, and you can find it on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, your favorite platform. I'm also offering a free gift for your audience, and that's my self-discovery journal for adults with ADHD. You can find that at youradhdguy.com. It's like right at the top. There's a couple free resources right there for you. Um, if you don't like that one, um, yeah, I just want to make this information available. And I'm also doing a brand new thing. It's called this 7-day challenge. It's the Reclaim Your Voice challenge. So if you feel like you're um like struggling with who you are and your identity and being able to speak up, and you just need that extra push, and you need this challenge, like, definitely check that out. That's on my website as well, youradhdguy.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being on Mindful Mutiny. I appreciate chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. And
Absolutely.
thank you
And
for what
please,
you do.
oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's definitely growing, and it's exciting to see people really start to see their own value. That's the wonderful thing.
Yeah, man, we need as many people to speak up and say, "Look, you have something to offer the world, and the world needs you." Like, I don't care how the whether you're in addiction, or you just feel like you don't have anything of worth and God's left you, like, trust me, God doesn't make mistakes, and you are worth looking into yourself and believing in yourself.
Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the Mindful Mutiny podcast. And remember that in a lifetime, there's more decisions than anybody can count. Living the highest form of yourself is the most rewarding thing that you can do. Make incredible, positive, risky, and bold decisions to be the highest version of yourself. Now go be something great.